The night I helped my wife's business partner close her cafe for the last time, I thought the hardest part would be turning off the lights. I was wrong. The hardest part was Tess Morgan standing behind the counter in a flour-dusted black dress, holding my late wife's old keyring like it weighed more than the building, then looking at me with tired eyes and whispering, "Ben, come upstairs with me." There are sentences that change the temperature of a room. That one changed the temperature of my life. My name is Ben Carter. I was 32 years old, a high school history teacher, and for the past 18 months, I had been doing a pretty convincing impression of a man who had accepted his grief. I graded papers, I took out the trash on Thursdays. I smiled when people at church said, "Rachel would want you to be happy," even though none of them ever stayed long enough to explain what happy was supposed to look like when half your closet still smelled like someone who wasn't coming back. Rachel had been my wife for 6 years. Tess had been her business partner for 4. Together, they had opened the Blue Juniper, a narrow little cafe on Ash Street with mismatched chairs, lemon scones people drove 20 minutes for, and a painted sign Rachel had insisted on hanging crooked because, according to her, perfect things make customers nervous. After the accident, Tess kept the cafe alive. I don't know how. Maybe stubbornness, maybe caffeine, maybe love. She ran morning rushes with red eyes and a smile sharp enough to cut through pity. She fixed the espresso machine with YouTube videos and threats. She learned payroll, inventory, landlord negotiations, and grief in the same brutal season. I stayed away at first, not because I didn't care, because every corner of that place remembered my wife better than I did. The little table by the window where Rachel used to sketch menu ideas, the chalkboard where she wrote quotes from poets and misattributed half of them, the kitchen door frame where she'd once measured herself against me and declared I was unfairly tall for a man with no basketball talent. Tess never pushed. She just sent quiet texts, changed the almond milk order. Rachel always overbought, found her recipe notebook. "Do you want it?" The landlord raised rent again. "I'm handling it." Then, 3 weeks before that final night, she sent one that made me sit down on the edge of my bed. "I can't keep the cafe open anymore. I read it 6 times." Then I called her. She answered on the 4th ring with cafe noise behind her, cups, steam, someone laughing. Her voice was light in that dangerous way people use when they're one bad word away from breaking. "Before you say anything, Noble," she said, "I already tried Noble. Noble doesn't pay commercial rent." I wasn't going to say Noble. What were you going to say? I looked at the framed photo on my dresser. Rachel between us at the cafe opening, one arm around me, one around Tess, grinning like she had personally invented coffee. I was going to ask what you need. Tess went quiet. That silence did something to me, not the old grief exactly, something warmer, more dangerous. Finally, she said, "I need help closing." So, on a rainy Friday in October, I showed up after the last customers left. The Blue Juniper looked smaller at night. The display case was empty except for 3 crooked shortbread cookies Tess claimed were too ugly to sell but too emotionally complex to throw away. The chairs were stacked on tables. Half-packed boxes lined the wall. Tess stood on a step stool pulling dried lavender from the shelves, her dark hair twisted up with a pencil through it. She had always been beautiful, but not in a way that asked for attention. More like a song playing in another room. You noticed it when everything else got quiet. She looked down at me. "You're late. I'm 5 minutes early. Rachel time." That hit both of us. Tess's smile faded first. "Sorry," she said. "Don't be." I set down the roll of packing tape. "She was late to our wedding rehearsal. She said punctuality was a tool of capitalism. She said that because she forgot her shoes." Tess laughed, and for 1 second the cafe breathed again. I had forgotten what her laugh did. It wasn't loud. It was low and surprised, like she hadn't given herself permission, but joy had slipped out anyway. She stepped down from the stool, misjudged the last step, and I caught her by the waist before she could stumble into a box of mugs. It was nothing. It was everything. Her hands landed against my chest. Mine stayed at her waist 1 beat too long. She smelled like vanilla, rain, and exhaustion. "Still saving people from furniture?" she asked softly. "Only the reckless ones." "I'm not reckless." "Tess, you once argued with a health inspector while holding a blowtorch." It was a culinary torch. That distinction probably comforted him. Her mouth curved, but she didn't move away. Neither did I. For the first time since Rachel died, I felt something in my body wake up that had nothing to do with memory. It was immediate and inconvenient and made me feel guilty enough to let go. Tess noticed. Of course she noticed. Tess noticed everything. She turned toward the counter and started folding dish towels with aggressive precision. You can take the blue mugs. Rachel wanted you to have them. She wanted me to have mugs? She said you drank coffee like a man being punished. I teach teenagers before 8 in the morning. Coffee is not a beverage, it's a legal defense. That got another smile, smaller this time. We worked for 2 hours. We wrapped plates in newspaper, took down shelves, found old receipts behind the register, and a petrified croissant Tess claimed predated democracy. Rain tapped the windows. The street outside blurred gold and black under the lamps. Every few minutes, our hands brushed. Every time, we both pretended not to feel it. That was the strange thing about grief. People think it kills desire cleanly, like turning off a faucet. It doesn't. It buries it under shame and dust and the fear that wanting anything new means you didn't love what you lost. Around 10, Tess made us coffee even though we were closing a cafe and caffeine at that hour was objectively stupid. We sat at the small table by the window. Rachel's table. Tess pushed a mug toward me. Last cup. I lifted it. To the crooked sign. To lemon scones. To the woman who thought tax forms were a personal attack. Tessa's eyes shone, but she smiled. She was right. We drank. For a while, we watched rain slide down the glass. Then Tess said, I used to be jealous of you. I turned toward her. Of me? Not in a villainous way. I didn't plot dramatically by the pastry case. That's disappointing. I know, very low production value. She traced the rim of her mug with one finger. I was jealous because Rachel came alive around you in a way I couldn't compete with. And then, after she died, I was angry at you. That landed harder. Why? Because you got to disappear. Her voice stayed gentle, which somehow made it worse. You could leave this place and grieve in private. I had to unlock the door every morning and sell muffins to people who wanted to tell me where they were when they heard. I swallowed. Tess, I'm not saying that to hurt you. She finally looked at me. I'm saying it because tonight is the last night I can tell the truth inside these walls. The cafe felt suddenly too quiet. I should have helped sooner, I said. Yes, she said. No cushioning, no polite denial. Then she reached across the table and touched my hand. But you're here now. Her thumb brushed once over my knuckle. A small movement, almost accidental. It wasn't accidental. My pulse changed. Tess, I said. But I didn't know if it was a warning, an apology, or the beginning of something I was terrified to want. She looked at my mouth, just for half a second. Then the bell over the door jingled. We both turned. A man stood inside, rain dripping from his jacket, a folder tucked under one arm. I recognized him from the few tense phone calls I'd overheard months earlier. Cal Whitman, the landlord. He smiled like he had practiced it in mirrors that didn't like him. Sorry to interrupt, he said, though he didn't sound sorry at all. I saw the lights on. Tess pulled her hand back. The absence of it felt loud. We're closed, Cal. I know. His eyes moved from her to me, then down to the half-packed boxes. Just wanted to make sure you understood the move-out terms. Anything left after midnight becomes property of the building. It's 10:15, Tess said. Then I guess you'd better hurry. I stood. We'll be out on time. Cal looked at me like he was deciding whether I mattered. And you are? I almost said, nobody. But Tess answered before I could. He's family. The word hit me in a place I didn't have armor. Cal's smile thinned. Well, family should read contracts. He placed the folder on the counter, tapped it twice, and left without buying even an ugly cookie. The bell jingled again. Rain swallowed him. Tess stood very still. What is that? I asked. She didn't answer. She crossed to the counter, opened the folder, and her face changed. Not fear exactly, something worse. Defeat. Tess? She closed the folder slowly. He added fees, cleaning, restoration, early termination penalties. It's nonsense, but if I fight it, he'll drag it out. I don't have the money or the energy. How much? She laughed once, empty. Enough. I stepped closer. Let me see. No. Tess. No, Ben. She pressed both hands to the counter. I am not letting Rachel's husband rescue me from the ruins of Rachel's dream. I've already lost enough dignity in this place. There it was. The wall between us. Not grief, pride, love, loyalty, all tangled together until nobody could move without hurting someone dead. I reached for the folder anyway, slower this time. Then don't let Rachel's husband do it. She looked at me. I held her gaze. Let me do it. The rain kept tapping the windows. Tess's breath caught, and for a moment I thought she might cry. Instead, she took the folder, shoved it into a box, and turned away. We need to finish upstairs, she said. I blinked. Upstairs? The office, storage, Rachel's things. Her voice dropped. Then she came closer, close enough that I could see a tiny streak of flour at her jaw and the tremble she was trying to hide. She touched my wrist. Not because she needed help, because she wanted me to follow. And in the dark, emptied cafe my wife had built with her, Tess Morgan leaned in and whispered, Come upstairs with me. The stairs to the second floor were narrow, steep, and painted the same stubborn blue as the cafe sign. I had been up them only twice before. Once, when Rachel had proudly shown me the office, she and Tess had turned from a storage closet into a command center, which meant one desk, two lamps, and a calendar full of crossed-out mistakes. The second time was after the funeral, when I'd come to collect Rachel's sweater from the back of a chair and left before Tess could offer me tea. Now Tess climbed ahead of me, one hand on the rail, the other holding the old keyring. Halfway up, she stopped. I nearly walked into her. You okay? I asked. No. She glanced over her shoulder. But I'm trying to be charming about it. You're doing great, very haunted, extremely elegant. That pulled a breathy laugh from her. The sound warmed the stairwell. At the top, she unlocked the office door and hesitated before pushing it open. The room smelled like paper, dust, coffee beans, and lavender. Sloped ceiling. One small window overlooking Ash Street. Boxes stacked along one wall. Rachel's handwriting still covered half the whiteboard. Call electrician. Order lemon zest. Tell Ben he is wrong about the green tile. I stared at those words. Tess moved beside me. She wrote that after you said the bathroom looked like a pickle jar. It did. It had character. It had brine. Tess leaned her shoulder lightly into mine. Not much. Enough. I didn't step away. For a moment, we just stood there, shoulder to shoulder, looking at proof that Rachel had once occupied ordinary Tuesday afternoons. Then Tess whispered, I'm scared if I erase it, she'll be less here. My throat tightened. She won't. You sound sure. I'm not. I looked at the board. But I know Rachel. If she's anywhere, she's not trapped in dry erase marker. Tessa's mouth trembled. Then she reached for a cloth and I caught her hand before she touched the board. Wait. She looked at me. I took out my phone and photographed the whole thing. Every note, every crooked arrow, every ridiculous insult about my tile judgment. Tess watched me, eyes glossy. You always do that. What? Make grief practical. I thought that was your specialty. No. She looked down at our joined hands. I make it. Profitable. Or I did. I didn't let go. Her fingers were cool, mine closed around them like I had been waiting all night for permission. Tess, I said, you don't have to perform failure for me. Her eyes lifted. I know what you're doing, I continued. You're acting like losing this place means you failed her. Her jaw tightened. Don't. I'm saying it because it isn't true. You don't know that. I know Rachel loved you. That broke through. Tess shut her eyes. I stepped closer, slowly enough that she could stop me. She didn't. When I wrapped my arms around her, she stood stiff for one breath, then folded into me with a sound so small, I felt it more than heard it. Her forehead pressed against my chest. My hand settled between her shoulder blades. She was trembling. I miss her, she whispered. I know. And I'm angry at her. I know that too. Her fingers gripped my shirt. She left me with ovens that don't heat evenly, a supplier who overcharges, a landlord with the soul of a parking ticket, and customers who still ask if I'm keeping her recipes exactly the same. I almost smiled into her hair. She did have a talent for chaos. She made everything beautiful and then left me to do the spreadsheets. She hated spreadsheets. She said they were where numbers went to die. I laughed, and Tess did too, wetly, against my chest. The hug changed then. It began as comfort. It became awareness. Her cheek shifted against me. My palm moved once over her back and stopped at her waist. Her breathing slowed. Mine didn't. She tilted her face up. We were too close for pretending. Tess, I murmured. I know, she said. But she didn't move away. The little office was dim except for the desk lamp, and in that gold light her eyes looked darker than usual. Tired. Afraid. Wanting. I shouldn't want this, she said. The honesty struck harder than any kiss could have. I answered with the truth because anything less would have insulted both women in that room. I do. Her lips parted. I don't know what it means, I added. I don't know what it makes me. But I want to be here with you, not because of Rachel, not because you're in trouble, because when you laugh, I feel like I've been holding my breath for a year and a half. Tess stared at me. Then she touched my face. Her thumb brushed the corner of my mouth with a tenderness that undid me. I wanted you before, she whispered. My heart kicked once, hard. Before? Her smile was sad and shy and a little wicked. Not while she was alive. Don't look terrified. I'm not confessing a tragic betrayal in the attic. It's an office. It has boxes and ghosts. It counts. She swallowed. I mean after. Months after. I'd see you come in for 5 minutes and run away, and I'd be furious with you and relieved to see you and aware of you. Then I'd hate myself for it. I know that feeling. Her gaze dropped to my mouth again. This time, I didn't look away. I lowered my forehead to hers. If I kiss you, I need you to tell me it's because you want me, not because tonight hurts. She gave a shaky laugh. Ben Carter, that is the most decent and inconvenient sentence anyone has ever said to me. I can try being worse. Don't you dare. Her hand slid to the back of my neck. I want you, she said clearly, and tonight hurts. Both are true. That was all the permission I had the strength to survive. I kissed her, softly at first, carefully, like we were standing at the edge of something sacred and dangerous. Tess rose onto her toes and kissed me back with a sudden, aching certainty. Her fingers tightened in my hair. Mine found her waist, the warm curve of her beneath the black dress, and I forgot the rain, the boxes, the landlord, the deadline. For a few seconds, there was only Tess. Not Rachel's business partner, not the woman keeping the cafe afloat. Tess. Her mouth parted under mine, and the sound she made almost ruined me. Then she pulled back, breathing hard. We stared at each other. I expected guilt to crash in. It came, but not like a wave, more like a shadow in the corner. Present, but not sovereign. Tess touched her lips. Well, I tried to remember language. Yes. That was complicated? Actually, I was going to say excellent, but sure, let's ruin it. With emotional vocabulary. I laughed, and she smiled for real this time. A real smile. It transformed her. I wanted to kiss her again just to see if I could make it stay. Instead, she stepped back and pointed at a stack of boxes, like a woman trying to regain authority over the universe. We should sort Rachel's things before I do something reckless. Define reckless. Don't flirt with me while I'm vulnerable. You kissed me first. You moved in first. You invited me upstairs. That was for storage. Was it? She opened her mouth, closed it, then threw a roll of tape at me. I caught it against my chest, grinning like an idiot. For the next half hour, we sorted. Recipe notebooks, vendor files, a framed newspaper clipping about the cafe opening, a jar labeled emergency chocolate containing 3 paper clips and a stale mint. At the bottom of one box, Tess found a sealed envelope. Her name was on it. So was mine. Ben plus Tess in Rachel's unmistakable looped handwriting. The room went very still. Tess's face drained of color. That wasn't here before. I took a step closer. Are you sure? I've gone through these boxes a dozen times. She held the envelope like it might burn her. The old version of me would have reached for it, taken charge, made the moment practical. But the woman in front of me had just trusted me with her mouth, her grief, and a truth neither of us knew how to carry yet. So I asked, "Do you want to open it?" Tess looked at the envelope, then at me. Her eyes were frightened, but her voice was steady. "Only if you hold my hand." So I did. We sat side by side on the worn office floor, knees touching, fingers laced, and together we opened the letter my dead wife had left for both of us. Tess unfolded the letter with both hands. I kept hold of one of them anyway. Rachel's handwriting covered 2 pages, blue ink slanting as if she'd written in a hurry, which she probably had. Rachel had done everything in a hurry except leave the house, choose jam, and forgive people. Tess stared at the first line and made a sound like she'd been struck. "What?" I asked. She shook her head and handed it to me. I read aloud because neither of us seemed able to breathe otherwise. "Dear Ben and Tess, if you are reading this, either I finally organized the upstairs office, in which case please applaud, or one of you found this while looking for something sensible. Knowing you both, Tess is probably crying and Ben is pretending not to." Tess laughed once, sharp and wet. I rubbed my thumb over her knuckles. She did know us. "Keep reading," she whispered. I did. "I'm writing this because the doctor used the word precaution today, and I hate that word. It sounds like a boring umbrella. I am fine. I will probably find this letter in 6 months and burn it dramatically. But on the off chance life pulls one of its rude little tricks, there are things I need you both to know. Ben, my love, you were the safest place I ever had. Tess, my fierce girl. You were the bravest." My voice broke. Tess took the letter from me, but not my hand. Her shoulder pressed against mine as she continued, "If something happens to me, I know exactly what you two will do. Ben will disappear because grief will convince him he is protecting everyone from his sadness. Tess will keep moving because stopping will feel like betrayal. You will both be idiots. Beautiful idiots, but idiots." A tear slipped down Tess's cheek. I leaned over and kissed it before I could think myself out of it. She closed her eyes, not flinching, not hiding. When she opened them again, the look she gave me was so tender, it made the whole dim office feel like morning. She read on, voice shaking. "I need you to promise me something. Do not turn me into a wall between you. I love you both in different ways, and I know you love me. But love is not a museum. You don't prove it by locking the doors and dusting what's gone. Ben, let someone make you laugh again. Tess, let someone take care of you sometimes, even if it offends your entire personality. And if someday that someone is each other, I will be insufferably smug about it wherever I am." Tess stopped. The rain below us seemed too loud. I stared at the page until the words blurred. If someday that someone is each other. Rachel had seen us more clearly than we had seen ourselves. Or maybe she had simply loved us enough not to fear what might come after her. Tess folded forward, the letter pressed to her chest. "I can't decide if I want to hug her or yell at her." "She'd prefer both," I said. "In public." Tess wiped her cheek with the heel of her hand. "She wrote this before the accident?" "Doctor," I said quietly. "What doctor?" Tess looked at me. For a moment, that question opened a darker door. Rachel had never told me about a precaution appointment. Not one. There was a pinch of mystery there, a pain with teeth. But Tess was trembling beside me, and the letter between us was not a clue. It was a gift. So I let the question wait. I reached for her instead. "Tess." She turned into me before I finished saying her name. This time, the embrace wasn't grief first, it was choice. Her arms went around my neck and mine wrapped around her waist, pulling her close until she was half in my lap on the office floor, warm and real and breathing. "I'm scared," she whispered into my throat. "Of me? Of wanting you and being relieved that I'm allowed to." She pulled back enough to look at me. "That sounds horrible." "No." I brushed a loose strand of hair from her cheek. It sounds human. Her eyes searched mine. Are you relieved? I should have given a careful answer. I didn't. Yes. She exhaled like that one word had been holding up a ceiling. Then she kissed me. Not carefully this time. Her mouth found mine with hunger and sorrow and a kind of fragile joy. I kissed her back, my hand sliding to the nape of her neck, fingers tangling in her hair. The pencil holding it up clattered somewhere beside us, and her hair fell loose around my hands. She broke away just long enough to whisper, "That pencil was structural. I'll apologize to it later. You're ruining my systems. I'm a history teacher. Systems collapse around me." She laughed against my mouth and the sound went straight through me. We stayed like that for a while, sitting on the old wooden floor amid boxes and ghosts, kissing like two people given permission, but not yet courage. Each time we paused, we touched foreheads, hands, sleeves, as if making sure the other hadn't vanished. At last, Tess leaned back, breathless, cheeks flushed. "We still have to be out by midnight," she said. I glanced at my watch. 11:03. Romance is terrible for productivity. Strongly disagree. She smiled, then looked at the letter again. There was more. She read the final paragraph silently, and her eyebrows drew together. "What?" I asked. She handed it to me. "If the cafe ever becomes too heavy, sell what you can, save what matters, and look behind the crooked sign." I hid something there after the opening party because Tess said the wall safe was too dramatic, and Ben said wall safes were not real life. "You are both wrong often. With love, Rachel." Tess blinked. "Wall safe? I stand by my statement. Wall safes belong in spy movies and rich people's libraries." She loved proving you wrong. We moved fast after that, but the mood had shifted. Not lighter exactly, deeper, as if the room had exhaled. Downstairs, the cafe waited in amber, half-dark. The crooked sign hung behind the counter, painted blue with white letters. Tess stood beneath it, hands on hips. "If there is actually a safe behind there, I'm going to be unbearable." "You already are." She pointed at me. "Careful, you're dating me now." The word dating stopped us both. Her eyes widened. I stepped closer. "Are we?" Tessa's bravado flickered. "I don't know, are we?" I looked at her standing in the cafe Rachel had loved, hair loose, face tear-streaked, mouth swollen from kissing me. I thought about 18 months of locked doors inside myself. I thought about the letter upstairs. Mostly I thought about Tess asking, not assuming, wanting to know if I would choose her in language, not just in darkness. So I said, "I'd like to be." Her lips parted. "Not because Rachel gave us permission," I added. "Because I want to take you to dinner when you're not covered in flour and legal threats." I'm often covered in one of those. Then breakfast. I own a failing cafe. Breakfast feels ironic. Walk in the park? It rains here constantly. Tess. She smiled slowly. "Yes? Go on a date with me." There was no thunder, no music, just rain tapping the windows in a half-empty cafe waiting to be packed. Tess stepped into me, lifted onto her toes, and kissed me once. Soft, deliberate, public in the only place that mattered. "Yes," she whispered against my mouth. "But I'm choosing the place. Your date ideas are tragic." I grinned. That was a yes. That was a heavily edited yes. We took down the sign together. Behind it, exactly where Rachel had promised, was a small square panel in the wall. Tess stared. I hate that she was right. She would have loved hearing that. The panel opened with a simple latch. Inside was not a safe exactly, but a recessed box with an old tin tucked inside. Tess lifted it out. Inside were papers, a flash drive, and a small velvet pouch. The papers were lease documents, older than the ones Cal had given her. Tess scanned them, frowning. "This says Rachel negotiated a buyout clause." Her eyes darted across the page. "If rent increased beyond a percentage, we could terminate without penalty." Meaning Cal's fees are garbage. Possibly very expensive garbage. She laughed, but this time it was fierce. Then she opened the velvet pouch. A delicate gold necklace slipped into her palm, a tiny juniper branch pendant, blue stone at its center. Tess went still. "There's a note," I said. She unfolded it. "For tea. Wear this when you forget you're not just surviving." Tess didn't cry this time. She held the necklace out to me, turning her back. Will you? My hands weren't entirely steady as I moved her hair aside. The nape of her neck was pale and soft. She shivered when my fingers brushed her skin. Cold? I murmured. No. I fastened the clasp. For a second, my hands rested at her shoulders. She leaned back into me. I bent and kissed the place just below her ear. Her breath caught. Then, from the front door below the awning, someone knocked hard enough to rattle the glass. Tess stiffened. Through the rain-streaked window, Cal Whitman's silhouette waited outside again. Cal knocked again. Harder. The front glass rattled in its frame and Tess's shoulders tightened beneath my hands. For one bitter second, I wanted to open that door and throw every legal document in his face one page at a time. But Tess stepped out of my arms before I could move. No, she said. I blinked. I didn't say anything. You were about to become noble and broad-shouldered. I am sometimes both of those things by accident. She turned, the juniper necklace resting against her collarbone, her eyes bright with something stronger than fear now. This is my café, she said. My fight. I held up both hands. Then I'm your backup. Her mouth softened. That I'll take. We went to the door together. Cal stood under the awning, rain dripping from his hair onto the shoulders of his expensive coat. When Tess unlocked the door, he didn't wait for an invitation. He pushed inside with the kind of entitlement that made my hand curl. Tess noticed and laid 2 fingers against my wrist. Not to restrain me, to remind me she knew I was there. It worked. Cal looked around the cafe. You're cutting it close. We still have 40 minutes, Tess said. I'm here to make sure you don't damage the premises removing fixtures. The sign is mine. The sign is attached to my wall. Was attached. Tess smiled, and it was not a friendly smile. Cal's eyes moved to the counter where Rachel's tin sat open beside the lease papers. His face changed, just a flicker, but enough. Tess saw it too. You knew, she said. I have no idea what you mean. She picked up the old lease agreement. You knew there was a rent increase termination clause. Cal's jaw tightened. That document is outdated. It's signed by the previous property manager and by the ownership company you inherited when you bought the building. Tess's voice didn't shake. The fees you dropped off tonight violate this clause. I'd be careful making accusations. I took one step forward. Tess didn't look at me, but her fingers brushed mine at her side. A secret thank you. A quiet stay. So I stayed. Not because I was weak, because she had asked me to trust her. Tess set the papers on the counter, smoothed them flat, and looked Cal dead in the eye. Here's what's going to happen. I'm taking photos of every room before we leave. I'm keeping copies of these documents, and tomorrow I'm sending them to an attorney. Cal gave an ugly little laugh. With what money? That one hit. I felt it land in Tess. But she didn't fold. She lifted her chin. With enough. Then she reached back without looking and took my hand. Not because she needed rescuing, because she wanted me beside her when she stood up. Cal's gaze dropped to our joined hands, and something like calculation crossed his face. Touching, really. But midnight is midnight. Then you should leave, Tess said. You're slowing me down. For a moment, I thought he'd refuse. Then he snatched the folder he'd left earlier from the counter and headed for the door. At the threshold, he turned back. You'll regret making this difficult. Tess smiled sweetly. I've owned a food business for 4 years. Difficulty fears me. The door shut behind him. The bell jingled. The cafe went quiet. Tess stood perfectly still for 3 seconds. Then she whispered, My knees are pudding. I caught her as she sagged against me, laughing shakily. Very authoritative pudding, I said. She buried her face in my shirt. Tell me I sounded terrifying. You sounded like a woman who could evict a king. That's good. I was aiming for minor warlord. I held her, cheek resting against her hair, feeling the hard beat of her heart through both of us. Outside, Cal's car started and pulled away. No new disaster followed. Just rain. Just us. Tess tipped her head back. Thank you for not taking over. It was painful. I know. You had a vein in your temple. I named it Cal. She laughed and I kissed her because I could, because she was right there, because the laugh opened something in me and I wanted to meet it. She kissed me back with both hands on my face. This kiss was different from the ones upstairs, less grief, more promise. When she pulled away, her eyes were damp but steady. You really meant it? The date? Yes. Even after watching me threaten a landlord with documents I barely understand? Especially after that. I should warn you, I'm very bad at dating. I was married for 6 years. I'm not sure I remember how. Perfect. We'll be terrible together. Terrible first date, I said. Right now. She looked around the half-packed cafe. Ben, there are boxes everywhere, the floor is sticky, and our dessert options are 3 ugly cookies. I didn't say fancy. Her smile crept in. You are extremely easy to impress. Only by you. That stopped her. Color rose in her cheeks, soft and immediate. I liked that I could do that, unless liked it too much. Tess looked down, touched the juniper pendant, then said, Okay, first date. 10 minutes, then we finish. I pulled out 2 chairs from a table we'd already stacked and set them by the window. Tess fetched the ugly cookies on a napkin and poured the last half-inch of cold coffee into 2 small cups. This is humiliating for my brand, she said, sitting across from me. I find it rustic. It's stale. Rustic. She broke 1 cookie in half and handed me the larger piece. I accepted it solemnly. A generous woman. Don't get used to it. We tapped cookie halves like wine glasses. To terrible first dates, she said, to second ones with actual food. Her gaze lifted. Second? If the first one goes well. She took a bite, chewed, and made a face. This cookie tastes like betrayal. I'm having a wonderful time. You're lying. I'm flirting. With cookie optimism? With you. Her smile faded into something tender. The rain traced silver lines down the window beside us. The cafe, stripped almost bare, felt strangely intimate. No customers, no ghosts demanding performance. Just Tess across from me. Coffee in a paper cup, Rachel's necklace at her throat, her knee brushing mine under the little table. She looked at our knees, then back at me. Is this strange for you? Yes. Bad strange? I thought about it. No, like walking into a room I didn't know was still in my house? Her eyes softened. I don't want to replace her, she said. You couldn't. I don't want to compete with her either. You won't. Her fingers curled around her cup. And I don't want you to look at me someday and realize I was just nearby when you were lonely. That was the fear, wasn't it? Hers, mine, the one hiding beneath every kiss. I reached across the table, palm up. She placed her hand in mine. Tess, I was lonely before tonight, I said. But I didn't come here looking for a woman. I came here because you asked me for help. Then you laughed. Then you told me the truth. Then you kissed me like you were afraid and brave at the same time. Her thumb traced my lifeline. I'm not choosing nearby, I said. I'm choosing you. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she stood, came around the table and sat sideways on my lap like she'd been debating it for 10 minutes, and finally got tired of arguing with herself. My hands found her waist automatically. Is this allowed on a first date? I asked. I own the establishment. Not for much longer. Then I'm abusing my remaining authority. She slipped her arms around my neck. Up close, I could see the tiny freckles across her nose, the tired shadows beneath her eyes, the brave set of her mouth. I could also see how much she wanted to believe me. So I gave her the only proof I had. I stayed still. Let her decide. Tess touched her forehead to mine. I'm choosing you too, she whispered. Even if I'm scared. Even if tomorrow is messy. Even if people talk. They will. Small towns are powered by pastry and gossip. I can survive gossip. Her lips brushed mine. Can you survive me? I smiled. I'm hoping to find out. She kissed me then, slow and deep, her fingers sliding into my hair, my arms tightening around her until there was no space left between us. The cafe might have been ending. The life I'd known might have been changing shape under my feet. But Tess was warm in my arms, and for the first time in 18 months, the future did not feel like betrayal. It felt like wanting. When the kiss ended, She didn't climb off my lap right away. She rested her head against my shoulder and looked around the cafe. "We should finish," she murmured. "In a minute." For a history teacher, you have very little respect for deadlines. History is mostly people missing deadlines and calling it destiny. She laughed softly against my neck. Then she lifted her head. "Ben?" "Yeah. When we lock the door tonight, will you stay with me until morning?" My heart turned over. "At your place?" I asked carefully. "At my place," she said. "On the couch if you want, or not. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready for." I brushed my thumb over her cheek. "I'm ready to not say goodbye at midnight." Her eyes shone. "Good," she whispered. Then we packed the last boxes side by side, hands brushing, smiling like fools every time they did. At 11:57, Tess turned the cafe key for the last time. The Blue Juniper was empty behind us. Not clean exactly. There were pale squares on the walls where pictures had hung, scuffs on the floor, and one stubborn smear of frosting on the counter Tess claimed had historical significance. But it was empty of what mattered. Rachel's recipes were in my trunk. The crooked sign was wrapped in a blanket. The tin with the lease papers sat between Tess's feet in the passenger seat like a sleeping guard dog. And Tess stood on the sidewalk in the rain, staring through the glass. I didn't tell her it would be okay. People say that when they want pain to hurry. Instead, I stood beside her and opened my coat so she could step under it with me. She did. Her shoulder pressed to my chest. My arm came around her. "I thought I'd feel relief," she said. "What do you feel?" "Like I just buried a building." I kissed her wet hair. "Then we'll mourn it." She turned her face up. Rain jeweled her lashes. "And then?" "Then we go to your place and eat something that wasn't baked during the previous administration." A tiny smile. "You make grief sound very domestic. I'm trying to impress you with range. It's working." She looked back at the cafe one more time, then lifted the key ring. Rachel's key. Her key. Tess removed the cafe key slowly and slid it through the mail slot. The sound it made hitting the floor inside was small. Final. Then she took my hand. "Take me home, Ben." Those words were not dramatic. No whisper in a dark stairwell. No kiss among boxes. Just a tired woman in the rain asking me to stay. They were the most intimate words anyone had said to me in years. Her apartment was above a closed bookshop 2 blocks over. Small kitchen, green sofa. Too many plants, most of them thriving out of spite. She changed into soft gray sweatpants and an old cafe shirt, and I stood in her kitchen making grilled cheese because it was the only meal both of us trusted me with. Tess sat on the counter, bare feet swinging, watching me. "What?" I asked. "You look very serious." "Cheese deserves respect. You teach wars and revolutions. This cannot be your highest pressure assignment." "You haven't seen me burn bread." She smiled, then went quiet. I looked over. "What is it?" She touched the juniper pendant at her throat. "I keep waiting to feel ashamed. And I feel sad." Her gaze met mine. "But not ashamed." I set the spatula down and stepped between her knees. She let me. "I keep waiting too," I admitted. "For guilt to prove I'm doing something wrong." "Has it?" "No." I brushed my thumb over her cheek. "It only reminds me I loved her." Tess nodded, eyes shining. "I loved her too." "I know. And I want you." My breath caught even after everything. She smiled a little through her tears. Apparently I'm saying brave things now. It's exhausting." I kissed her, slow, certain. Not a question anymore, but not a demand either. When we pulled apart, she rested her forehead against mine. "I'm not ready to rush," she whispered. "Good. I'm not going anywhere." That night, I slept on the green sofa under a quilt that smelled like lavender detergent. Tess slept in her room with the door open. At 3 in the morning, she came out carrying a pillow. "You awake?" she whispered. "Yes." "I hate my bed." I suspected it was emotionally suspicious. She almost laughed. "Can I sit with you?" I lifted the quilt. She curled beside me, not quite lying down, not quite leaving space. I wrapped one arm around her, and she tucked her head beneath my chin. We didn't do anything more than breathe together in the blue dark. But sometime before dawn, her hand found mine under the quilt and held on. By Monday, Cal's fees had dissolved under one sharply worded letter from an attorney Tess found through an old customer who apparently paid for croissants with legal favors. By Friday, the security deposit was returned. By the next month, the cafe's equipment had sold, the recipes were archived, and the crooked sign hung in Tess's living room above the green sofa. Our first real date was not tragic. Tess chose a tiny ramen place in the next town where nobody knew us. She wore the juniper necklace, red lipstick, and a look that dared me to mention how nervous she was. I was nervous too. Halfway through dinner, she stole a piece of pork from my bowl. "That was intimate," I said. "That was taxation." "You could have asked." "I'm building mystery." "You're building a criminal record." She laughed, and there it was again, the feeling of windows opening inside me. After dinner, we walked along the river under street lamps, hands brushing, until Tess finally said, "For heaven's sake, Ben," and took mine. People did talk, of course they did. Some were kind, some were curious. A few were cruel in that polished way people use when they're pretending judgment is concern. Tess handled it better than I did. When Mrs. Vance from church told me, "It seemed sudden," Tess slipped her arm through mine and said, "Grief only looks sudden from the outside." Then she squeezed my hand until I stopped shaking. We learned slowly. We had rules. Honesty before assumptions. Rachel's name was allowed at any table. Bad days did not mean the relationship was failing. Tess could ask for help without owing me gratitude. I could miss my wife without apologizing to the woman I loved now. The first time I told Tess I loved her, we were painting the back room of a small bakery she'd been hired to manage. She had a streak of yellow paint across her nose and was lecturing me about brush technique with absolutely no qualifications. "You're feathering wrong," she said. "I don't know what feathering is." "That's obvious. You made that word up." "I did, but you're still doing it wrong." I watched her laugh at herself, sunlight catching. In her hair, Rachel's pendant at her throat, and the words came out before fear could organize a defense. "I love you." Tess froze. Paint dripped from her brush onto the floor, then her eyes filled and she whispered, "Oh, thank God." I laughed, but it broke in the middle. She crossed the room and kissed me with yellow paint on her hands, leaving fingerprints on the back of my neck. "I love you too," she said against my mouth. I was trying not to say it first because I'm dignified. "You are covered in paint." Dignified paint. By the following spring, Tess opened a weekend pastry stall at the farmer's market called Juniper and Rain. Not a cafe. Not Rachel's dream resurrected. Tess's dream, shaped by what survived. I helped set up the tent on Saturday mornings before school papers and errands and whatever ordinary life had become. She sold lemon scones from Rachel's recipe, honey cakes of her own invention, and ugly cookies on purpose because people started asking for them. Above the stall hung the crooked blue sign, smaller now, hand-painted by Tess. The first morning when the line finally slowed, she came around the table and tucked herself beneath my arm. "Do you think she'd like it?" she asked. I looked at the sign, the pastries, the woman beside me wearing flour on her sleeve and sunlight on her face. "I think she'd complain the sign isn't crooked enough." Tess laughed. Then she kissed me in front of everyone. Not a secret, not an apology, not something borrowed from grief. A kiss rooted in the life we had chosen after loss. And as I held her there, with market bells ringing and lemon sugar in the air, I understood that love does not erase what came before. Sometimes, if you're lucky, it carries it gently into the morning. What would you have done if your late wife's business partner whispered, "Come upstairs with me," on the night you were closing the place they built together? Have you ever experienced something similar, where grief, loyalty, and unexpected love all collided at once? Tell your story in the comments. And for those who'd like to be a little closer to us, we've opened memberships where you'll get shorter, exclusive stories every week with no ads. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.